So I'm going to read from my book of short stories called Strange. It's my fiction debut, and it's a collection of short stories that are a modern, progressive tales of the unexpected. This is the last story in the book called Room for Two, and I chose it because it mentions a grey and gloomy England, which today is, and the fact that none of us have been able to go on summer holidays this year. And this is about a mother and daughter going on a summer holiday, and then something happens, which you'll have to read for yourself, but I'll read you the first bit, a little bit of it. All in all, it was a very difficult period in our lives, and in the summer, I decided that a holiday was in order. We packed 2 small suitcases with just the essentials, clothing, toiletries, and a few of Maya's favorite toys and books, and that afternoon flew to sun-drenched Corfu, leaving a grey and gloomy England behind us. Maya was excited. She had been subdued since her illness and her father's inexplicable desertion. But once in the air, her wan face lit up, and she spent the whole flight pointing to the Lilliputian landscapes and funny-shaped clouds she saw from the window. The middle-aged man next to me looked irritated, but Maya was enjoying herself after such a long time that I wasn't about to stop her. I had gone all out to make this a holiday to remember, renting a villa in a lovely lemon grove despite our constrained circumstances. I couldn't stretch to a pool, but I hoped she would make friends with kids from neighboring villas quickly and join them at theirs, leaving me time to write. I had just begun freelancing after months off work, and it would have to be a working holiday. We drove past white sand beaches and up winding wooded roads in our rented car till we reached our villa atop a hill. Maya chatted all the way there as if a stopper had been removed, and all the thoughts she'd bottled up inside for so long were pouring out. Oh, Mummy, look, a freckle. The sun's given me my first freckle after ages. I looked at the tip of her nose, to which she was pointing proudly, but could see nothing. Not wanting to disappoint, however, I laughed and happily agreed. The sun was scorching, and the sea shimmered in the heat. But as we drove into the ancient orchards that cocooned our group of villas, the trees shut out the blaze, bathing everything in a green light. It was not what I'd expected, but it looked restful, and I could see it being just the thing for us after the trials and tribulations of the past months.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful reading, and
thank you.
From a very beautiful book, I have to say.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much.
Now, writing short stories is only one of the many strings to your bow. You've written memoir, you've written travel writing, you've been a journalist, you've even written libretto for the Welsh National Opera, and are writing more, I believe.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
There might be others coming up.
Excellent. So, when and how did you first know that you were a writer?
Oh, wow. Gosh. Well, I grew up in a family full of writers, novelists, poets, journalists, editors, professors. So we were surrounded by writing and books, and and we were bilingual as well right from the start. And literature was so much a part of my life. So I started writing pretty early. I was a voracious reader. I zipped through all my parents' books by the time I was 9 or 10. And I was I was published for the first time at 5 or 6 in a school magazine. I started with poetry, amazingly, but then stopped altogether. And it was a good long while before I wrote poetry again. But I became a TV journalist, a print journalist at first, and then I went into TV. From there, I'm still writing columns all the time, and I write for the National Geographic and CNN and so on. So, and now I've got 2 books out there, one of which is Memoir Meets Journalism, Memoirs of My Body, and the other is Strange, which I just read from. And the librettos, of course, and there's an opera coming up, which there's a whole amazing story behind it, but which I can tell you if you want. But
yes, please.
yes,
yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
be interested.
well, it was bizarre how they got hold of me because, like I said, I hadn't written poetry in ages. I'd never written a play outside of high school. Of course, I'd been writing for a long, long time for TV and for newspapers and magazines. I had a book out by then. So I'd just come back from the literary festival season in India, which is, very vibrant and busy. And I'd come back thinking, okay, and now I'm back in Nottingham. It's going to be a quieter life. And what I found in a disused email inbox, one I hardly ever use, was an email from a Sir David Pountney, who was a knight of three realms, so Britain, France, and Poland. And the first thing that struck me, I have to admit, is those emails you get from Nigerian princes who want to give you $1 million. This has got to be one of those. And so as it turned out, but I checked them out. I used my journalistic skills, and it turned out that there was a Sir David Pountney. He was the director of the Welsh National Opera, and they wanted me to write a libretto for them. I'd never written a libretto, but they had read my writing, and they felt that it fitted, that it had the rhythm and the color. So yeah, that's how we started, and it's great because I learned this craft. It's a new one for me, and a new skill from new as well as old, but new from one of the best in the business. So it's been amazing journey. And unfortunately, though, it's been put off this year. We were going to premiere in October. Yeah. But it will, hopefully, fingers crossed, it will go on the road in the UK in autumn of next year. And it'll be part of the Welsh National Opera's 75th birthday anniversary celebration, so the focal one in this. I'm not the only writer for this opera. There are 6 of us, and it's the first of its kind, a huge multicultural extravaganza. And I'm told I might even be the first South Asian woman to have ever written an international opera. So altogether, it's been amazing.
It sounds like an incredible opportunity, and you've
Yes.
worked very hard to be in a place where you can, sort of get those opportunities, haven't you?
I guess so. As you know as well, when you work at something you love, it doesn't always feel like work. There have often been times in my life, I know I work hard because, of course, I'm sleepless most of the time. I'm working, and I've got 3 children, including the dog, or I'm writing or drawing. I'm doing a lot of illustration as well these days. So, yeah, it does. I'm working. I can tell from I'm going gray, and and I need as soon as well. So I've been staring at the computer really hard, but it doesn't always feel like work. I often pinch myself and think, oh, this is amazing. I'm doing what I love, and I'm getting a little bit of recognition for it, tiny bit of money, and so it's a good life.
Yeah, good.
I'm very fortunate.
So what are you working on at the moment?
So I am working on my 3rd book for HarperCollins, which is a travelogue. So I have had travel columns in a lot of newspapers, for National Geographic magazine, and for the Hindu, which is one of the biggest newspapers in Asia, and various other places. I think I've written bits of travel for the Nottingham Post as well, and the Guardian. So it was kind of like almost inevitable that eventually I would write a book on travel. And the bizarre thing, of course, is that the difference is that I don't actually travel much. So there's no exotic or extravagant travel, not when you have, little kids and, you're working all the time, and you're like any other family trying to make just life, to get on with life. So the kind of travel I write about could be a bus trip to Nottingham, city centre. It could be a walk in Derbyshire. It could be something really that simple, or just going home to Calcutta. So that's the kind of travel I write about. And I think the reason why it resonates with people is not only because it's not extravagant, it's not luxurious, but it's also about it's really not travel adventures, it's travel misadventures. So it's called The Accidental Tourist, and I'm hoping to finish by the end of this year and have it out there by next year. That's one thing. The other thing is I'm working on a new Welsh National Opera project. Like with all our theatres, you know, with it being shut in lockdown, what our theatre companies have done, and that's the wonderful thing about them, is they've transferred a lot of their work onto film. So though we are going to release this work that I'm doing now in autumn this year, but it'll be on film, and it'll be illustration meets poetry. I write poetry now. Illustration meets poetry meets film. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. That's coming out soon. And I've got my monthly columns for big Asian newspapers. So it's busy. It's been busy.
Very busy by the sounds of it. You have to send us the link when the opera goes online.
Yeah.
So we can put it on the bookshop social media.
That'll be great. I shall do that. Thank you. Yeah.
So how has lockdown affected your writing life?
Oh God.
Hasn't made it less busy by the sound of it.
No, bizarrely, because when we all went into lockdown, we didn't know what to expect. And a lot of work did seem to be winding up or postponed. Because obviously, for example, our opera can't go ahead now, not this year. Excuse me. So I approached lockdown with some trepidation, but soon found that there was work flooding in. The amazing thing about creative people, creative organizations, is that they found a way. They found a way to get past the problems of a pandemic and lockdown. And I think we all feel more than ever that there is a need to reach out and touch people with art, and to make at a time when we're not able to connect in the usual way. I think art is doing a great job. Arts and artistic organizations to connect people. So there's actually been loads more work, or at least as much as ever. So I'm doing the opera, there's all the newspaper columns. I've written short stories about Black Lives Matter, because it's been, there's an anthology happening here in Nottingham, and I've contributed to that. And all sorts of and bizarre things, like finding out that my writing was in a British secondary school Key Stage 3 textbook to teach children English, which I thought was fantastically flattering. My son, who's in secondary school, wasn't that thrilled. I'm not going to have to study your work, mommy, am I? But but yes, and then so there might be things happening there. Yeah, lots of great things happening.
Sounds like the next question was, are you less productive or more productive? It sounds like you're being incredibly productive.
I think the fact that we're not sleeping has something to do with it as well. Lockdown has somehow it's done away with sleep. So the children are not sleeping, our dog is not sleeping, we're not sleeping. I think it's a combination of anxiety. We're all feeling that, and obviously, I think anxiety for us who are in the creative fields can lead to a lot of work as well. It spurs us on to think about different things, put ourselves in other people's shoes, because we're worried not only about ourselves but the world at large. I have friends and family in India, friends and family here, all over the world. I get regular messages from Corfu about how what's happening there. They cancelled Easter this year, and so on. So lockdown has been busy and anxious, but also productive.
And have you found any sort of surprising inspirations from the whole situation?
I think so. Surprising. I mean, the whole thing has been a surprise, hasn't it?
Yes, so, true.
It's just come upon us suddenly. I mean, we were expecting a lot of things to happen. Climate change is happening. We know that the world is going through a slight, a different time. People are sort of going back to old mores and are being a little bit more conservative about how they view the world. And so none of that was a surprise. But lockdown and the pandemic, no one was expecting that. So yes, I think it has been inspiring. I mean, like I said, I think I've written so much about lockdown. My columns have all touched upon them. How can you not, in a way?
Yeah, true.
It's all pervasive. For the first time, I don't know if it is for the first time, but it feels like it. It's global.
Mm.
I mean, perhaps because of social media and the media, we now know whatever's happening wherever else in the world.
Yeah.
So, and the fact that I write for 2 or 3 different countries means that I'm constantly soaking up the news from everywhere.
Mm.
And people's stories, because lots of people tell me stories just by way of conversation. And I don't try to, it gets woven into the fabric of my work, anybody's, I imagine. And it's inspired me to write poetry. All the poetry I've written has been this year. If you don't count the opera, which I wrote in 2018 and 2019, all the poetry I've written as an adult has been this year. So yeah, must be something about lockdown that makes you want to write poetry.
It's kind of a condensed and slightly detached way of writing about things, isn't it? You know, you sort of concentrate everything into as few words as possible, but evoke as much emotion and response as you can in the reader. So maybe that's appropriate for this year.
It probably is, yeah. And I think also the fact that it has inspired, not that my prose doesn't have a lot of my more intense feelings and stuff, it does, but the intensity of what we felt this year is probably, like you say, best distilled sometimes in poetry.
Yeah.
There has been that.
You were talking earlier on about how creative people have kind of got together and made the most of the situation, as it were. How do you engage with the writing community and the creative community in general, you know, sort of before and during lockdown?
Well, I am by choice quite reclusive, really. One of the things, I think, one of the reasons I moved from India was because there were too many people around me. So over here, and we live in a quiet part of Nottingham with the children and the dog, me and my husband. So not that much has changed in certain ways, and that we're quite self-contained anyway. But there's always been that opportunity to go out and meet my fellow writers, you know, events and even the odd coffee meeting where you can discuss, oh, what are you doing? And people bounce off each other and get that kind of creative inspiration as well from that. And it has all moved online, hasn't it? So, and I don't know, does it have its advantages? It's a different way of communicating, and there's been plenty of that. We've all had any number of Zoom meetings and chats and workshops and so on, and it feels a bit funny, but I guess it's the new normal. We're all getting used to it. It's not miles away from how I am anyway as a person in terms of avoiding company sometimes. Liking my quiet spaces to write in. So yeah, I've actually forgotten your question, but you might have to remember.
It was about how you engage with the writing community.
So there's been a lot of engaging, a lot of it with art. So for example, the Welsh National Opera project we're working on, there's again 5 of us doing it, and it's going to come together in a group of films where each of us talk about how we feel about not so much the pandemic, but the current political climate, how it's got intensified in the pandemic. So Black Lives Matters, you know, how ethnic minorities have been on the front line in the pandemic here in the UK for the NHS and for other frontline jobs, and everybody else as well, anybody who struggled in these times. We want to give that voice.
Yeah. I think that's really good. I'm really looking forward to it coming out.
Thank you. So are we.
Um, who inspires you? Not necessarily writers, but if I was to say, who have been maybe your 2 or 3 biggest inspirations?
Oh gosh. I don't know. It's hard because I also have a really terrible memory. So trying to recall people usually, I think it's a composite. I think it's everything. I draw inspiration because I do quite a range of work.
Mm,
So the things I draw inspiration for my columns and for my poetry and for my short stories might be a little bit different, and yet not, because like I was saying, my latest short story has the backdrop of a Black Lives Matter march. My latest poem is about how the arts really matter in these times.
mm,
My columns are all about the way governments are handling this situation and the advantages they're taking. Um, so I think the world around me is a huge inspiration. The stray stories people tell me, it used to be on buses and things. You know how there's always somebody who talks a lot on the bus and they always find you.
yes.
So for me, sometimes it's actually worked out well because I've got some brilliant stories out of them. Uh, and so it's still that. It's still just everyday people telling me their stories rather than, it is writers as well, but it's fellow writers and their experiences and the talks I have with them. I have heroes, of course I do, writing heroes. But now I think there's so many of them, this many years down the line, so very many that I'd struggle to pick just one
Yeah,
or
no,
two or
that's fair
three.
enough.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually, I think, quite healthy, I think, to be inspired by the sort of the world around us rather than, this sort of figure who you've probably never met, and although you might have read their work, you don't know very much about them. I think that's a really sort of healthy way of being inspired, to be honest.
Thank you.
That's just me. Okay, so you've achieved an awful lot in your life so far, and you're doubtless going to go on to achieve a lot more. What are you most proud of?
Oh gosh. I think yeah, I'm proud of it may not be a single thing. I'm kind of proud of being able to keep going because, like many people, I'm not alone, but there have been really hard times.
Mm,
Um, I was in a violent marriage, first marriage, and I did stop writing at the time, and I wish I hadn't. But I'm lucky to have been able to bounce back. I've had the support of good friends like you as well, and organizations that support me like Five Leaves, and my husband, who's been
mm,
a huge, huge source of support for the last 16 years. Um, so I think I'm proud of, and there've been, there are other obstacles. My health hasn't been great, and the fact that I'm a woman, and the fact that I'm a minority ethnic woman and a writer. We're not always given. I think there's a statistic like that we're 13% of the population in the UK, but only 6% of published writers
mm.
are from the Black and ethnic minority community. So, lots of obstacles. I'm not alone in that. Everybody has different hurdles they've had to cross. I think, like everybody else, I'm proud of having kept going. I'm proud of having done new things, lots and lots of new things. I'm proud of still being able to surprise myself and others, and of doing good work and trying new things all the time, never being afraid to try something new. And hopefully, it's a legacy, even if just for my children, that there's a whole range of, there'll be another book, maybe there'll be another 2 or 3 books, things that they can read as well and feel proud about. And there might be an opera, there will be an opera, and maybe 2, maybe 3 things that people can go and watch. I'm proud of being a relatable author,
Mm.
not of being somebody you can read and think, yeah, I get that. I've been there.
Yeah.
So yes, that's what I'm proudest of.
Okay. That's brilliant. And what do you hope to achieve in the future? Do you have an ultimate ambition or not?
I think now, when I was younger, I think I had specific ambitions. I think my ambition now is to make a difference in whatever small way that I can. I think my ambition, both as a mother and as a writer and an artist, is sort of coming together, in that I want to leave behind a better world. That sounds like the sort of thing you would say at a beauty contest. Uh,
That doesn't make it
and
any less valid and true, though.
yeah, in a small way. I don't expect to make a huge difference, but for every person who reads, every woman who reads Memoirs of My Body and says, nobody's ever talked to me. And I've had young women come to me and say, I've never had the opportunity to talk about things like that, about all that's leaky and messy. And so to make a difference, even on an individual basis, or for a column to speak to someone and for them to say, hey, here's another person who doesn't like the way the world is being run right now. Isn't that makes me feel supported. So it's little things like that. It's being able to provide support in some form or the other to people out there we're all going through hard times. So
Yeah. I mean, that is actually a big thing, sort of helping individual people, because you can try and bring about world peace, but that's going to take decades if it's ever possible. And
if it's ever
in the
possible,
meantime,
yeah.
it's not actually helping anyone. But if you
Yeah.
help people sort of, one at a time through its time,
I figure that,
Yeah.
if I can do that, that's my ambition, and then I'm doing a good job. So
yeah.
yeah.
So what were your ambitions when you were younger?
Oh, I think I wanted to win, prizes. I've won a couple of small ones. I don't think I'll ever win any big ones, and that's not a problem. I think there's a kind of writing that wins prizes, and there's a kind of writing that the average person will relate to. And I'm very happy to be in the second category. Very, very happy to be in the second category. So if prizes come, I'm not saying no, people. So if there are prizes that come along, I'm very happy to have them. But in the meantime, the prize is a lot of the mail I get from readers. That's the biggest prize.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Have you got a short reading to read it out with?
I have, this is from the same book, and the reason is because the other one is Memoir Meets Journalism, Memoirs of My Body, and I think it's kind of the sort of thing you need to read on your own. This book, by all accounts, Strange Stories, is meant to be good, intelligent fun, where you have to use your deductive powers as a reader. So this one, as soon as I can find it, is from a story called Full Circle. This is based in Leicester. The news right now for the wrong reasons, but for reasons where we're all facing the same problem everywhere. But it's also about people who are traveling. So just like the mom and the daughter traveled to Corfu, this is a family, and many families, a community, has traveled to Leicester from India. They're Bengalis. And also feels very relevant at this time, migration and its consequences. So it's called Full Circle. The usually gloomy Bosworth Drive community hall had been transformed by a dozen large chandeliers, loud music, and even louder voices hailing each other in hearty Bengali into a mela, except that it wasn't so much a mela as a pujo. Pujo, mind you, not a puja. Yana reminded herself in that exact finger-waggling manner Putulanti had, and hid a little smile. A puja is worship of the gods, Biplab uncle had explained in his pantomime villain way, twirling his moustache and booming at her jocularly. But a pujo is living it up like the gods. Pujo, anywhere in the world, means getting up at the crack of dawn to slokas sung in a gravelly, just-out-of-bed voice. For Yana, it meant gathering at the festive hub of the community hall bright and early for the most enormous breakfast anyone had ever seen. luchi, aloo dum, even prawn kochuri, if the auntie in charge of the kitchen had woken happy. And the most mouth-watering range of soft, squidgy, syrupy sweetmeats ever served outside Bengal. That was just the start. For the rest of the day, the hall would fill with music and games and as much chatter as could be squeezed in, making up for months of maintaining a stiff, very British upper lip, which even the British no longer bothered with, not since Diana's death, Biplab said. Lunch would see a mind-boggling array of delicacies from paturi, spicy fish baked in banana leaf, to patishapta, sweet coconut and cream-filled pancakes. And all this was just a prelude to the evening's revelry. First you eat, and then you eat again, then you gossip, and sometimes, without being asked, sing, until your jaw clacks loosely and your belly grows so large from all the food it obstructs your vision and makes you believe your singing is going down really well. Biplab's brother Shubir said with that same twinkle in his eye, clean-shaven as he was, there was no opportunity to twirl a moustache. And then you repeat it all till you're round enough to roll home at the end, promising yourself to never do it again. And yet you do.